Welcome back to our series about Storyist, the creative writing app for macOS and iOS. In the next couple of videos, I'm going to show you how to create print-ready PDF editions of your manuscript without having to reformat your original manuscript. So that's a very philosophical approach there that Storyist takes, and it's nice to not having to have your final manuscript like you'd have it in Word or in Pages, and then you'd have to go and reformat the page, reset the margins, and then give some service, some file that they do some conversion to, and you have no control over how the end result looks. So this is not how Storyist works. Storyist takes the content of your manuscript into consideration and applies it with something I'd like to call a book object to a different formatting, to a different page setup, and then either creates a PDF that you can distribute for people to read, or you can give it to your printer so that he can make a paperback version of it. In this video, I'm going to show you how the principle works, and in the next video, we're going to look at customizations of how you can make that PDF your own, literally. So let's look at how Storyist thinks about PDFs. We've already looked at how ebooks are created, in that we head over to File and Export, and then we can select a few files that are going to be kind of part of the ebook. And this is very similar to how PDFs work, but except for export, we're going to use File New. And then in here, we're going to find a book object. And if we create that, then we get 3 different templates. I'm going to stick with the first one here, but just before we get started, let me explain what the difference between these 3 is. So this one, which I'm going to be using, is the Blurb Trade Book Classic. This is essentially the same as this one, except for that this has a different formatting applied by default. Whereas the Blurb Trade Book Classic and the PDF edition, they have more or less the same formatting applied. This is probably a good idea to use for anything including Amazon KDP uploads, CreateSpace uploads, anything that, even if it's a screen reader edition of a PDF that you want to make of your manuscript, then use this one. The only other difference is the page count. So Blurb is a company, I don't know if you've heard of it, you can check them out at blurb.com. They are a print-on-demand provider, but they're kind of a print-on-demand / offset print / distribution provider. So it's well worth having a look at that, and Storyist supports them. And the way they work is that they can make a single copy of your paperback by print on demand, much like Amazon's CreateSpace or KDP service do, but Blurb can also in an instant switch to an offset print of your book. So if you find yourself in a situation where your book really takes off, and out of a sudden you find yourself selling, 1,000 copies a month or 10,000 copies a month, then you don't have to go and create another version of it. Blurb can use whatever PDF you give them and just switch it to their offset printing service, and then out of a sudden supply you with 1,000 copies a month. Not only that, they can also do distribution and fulfillment for your books, so they can get your book into Amazon as soon as somebody buys it. They can drop ship it there, I believe, but they also make sure your books get into bookstores using the Ingram distribution service here in the US, and therefore your book may then end up in bookstores like Barnes & Noble. So it's very interesting, well worth looking into. And so for that, just briefly to encapsulate all that, one of their requirements is that your page count needs to be divisible by 6, and that is so that they can serve both the print-on-demand presses as well as the offset presses. And the Storyist supports this by adding additional extra pages at the end of your book, as therefore one file kind of fits everything, and it kind of conforms to the Blurb requirements. The issue with this, at least with the PDF edition template, at least in this edition of Storyist, is that when it comes to changing your book size, the PDF edition will ask you this in millimeters, whereas Blurb will tell you this in inches. I kind of think more in inches, and that's why I'm going to stick with this. Just know those are the differences there. So I'm going to click this, I'm going to tick the Blurb Trade Book Classic template and hit choose. And so several things have happened here in Storyist. So on one hand, I can give it a name here, much like any other file. I'm just going to perhaps call it PDF edition now. And notice that the icon here is a little bit different. So this is now a book icon, whereas the other things in my project here are now kind of a text file icon. This is a manuscript icon, so I can expand it as well. And this one here is an image icon. And that is still in my project navigator. But we also have another kind of project view here, which is this one. And this is specific only to the PDF file we're creating. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. Then in the middle here, we have the actual document. This is not my document right now. This is just dummy text, and all the gestures still apply, all the view things still apply. You can display this with 2 pages side by side, so you can see what your book exactly looks like. And then on the right-hand side, we have an inspector here that gives us several ways of making sure our document flows properly. And this is also where I set the page size up here. Look, under page size, I can now see Blurb 6x9 trade book. This is what we've got here, and we can check a few others here. So 5x8 is a smaller size, 8x10 is a larger size, and then of course under choose other, I can specify any kind of page size I have, either self-defined or the ones that are currently installed on my computer here. So the first one here, this is where I can give it a name. That's the same name as over here. So this is the same here. Then we have a few author and keyword and title properties here. By the way, if you ever think this is too much clutter, you can just click on the top heading here or the word hide, and then this thing kind of collapses. So we're left with, less clutter. Sometimes, less is more. One of those things. I'm going to stick with 6x9 for now. These are the defaults. I'm not going to mess with it. Underneath it, you can see the bleed and some of the margins as well. The other thing here is the format inspector, and that's we're going to look at that in depth later. So for now, I'm just going to go and add some files to my PDF because that hasn't quite happened yet. This is just dummy text at the moment. So there's 2 ways of doing that. On either I can pick a document that I have on the right hand side here and just drag it in. So perhaps the copyright notice I'm just going to hold and drag in here, and I'm just going to drop that into this window down here. I can do that. And this is now part of the PDF that I'm going to create. And I guess also I'm gonna grab my actual manuscript here. I can, don't click on it because then otherwise it goes away. So you have to kind of hold it and drag it in. So if that's a little bit too cumbersome, don't worry, there's always another way, using that handy little plus icon at the bottom and choose add project files. And this is now a very similar dialog to the one that we've just had in the ebook creation dialog. You pick whatever files you want. In my case, this is just going to be the manuscript, I guess, and the copyright page. I don't need the title page here. I just need these 2 documents. Copyright notice is already there. It doesn't matter if I add it again. Well, look at that now. I've got the copyright notice twice. This is just terrible. As soon as you do that, they all drop in here. And maybe I'm just going to highlight that copyright notice, delete it again because I only really want it once. And you can change the order of these documents as well. So copyright notice, you could also have that at the back, or you want it at the front, which in my case I want this at the front. Now notice that the middle here hasn't quite changed yet, and that is because this PDF hasn't been created yet. This is just what the PDF is going to consist of, using these formatting options on the right hand side. But to actually create it, you have to click this button here, build PDF. And if ever you make a change and the PDF needs to be rebuilt, then Storyist will tell you that. There's a little M icon here. That means one of these, or in this case both of these documents, need to be built using these instructions on the right hand side here. And Storyist also tells you that at the very top of the screen where it says PDF is out of date. Now let me click this here, and then Storyist will go and do its thing. My manuscript is rather large, it's 132,000 words, so maybe I'm going to cut that down a little bit so that Storyist is a bit quicker when it comes to formatting my document and just trying out different formats there. Now notice what's happened here. So this is now what my copyright notice looks like in the book. Currently on the 6x9 template with a font that looks like Georgia, I believe, to me. And but if you look at my copyright notice on the right hand side, if the beach ball is going to go away, thank you, then you see that my copyright notice originally was written on a US letter formatted page in Helvetica. So the PDF has now applied different formatting and different page setup instructions to this thing and given me this. Very interesting. If I scroll down, then I can see this is where my manuscript begins. And notice also that the header has changed into something else and the footer has changed. I all of a sudden have continuous page numbering, even though I have two separate documents here that the PDF has been created with. So that's very interesting, and it all looks really good out of the box. I even get the page count up here, which is 468 pages right now in this setup, in the 6x9 inch setup. And this is basically more or less exactly what I did. So this is actually the final version. It arrived here yesterday, very exciting, and this is how thick it is. And I did all this just with Storyist, and this is what the book looks like on the inside. So I've got a header here, I've got a footer here, and I've done all this without having to leave an application. So that is very, very cool. So some of these things I'm happy with, some of these things I'm not happy with, and we're going to talk about how to customize all these settings in the next video. But for now, let's say I'm not entirely sure what format I want to go for, and perhaps I want to go for something smaller, say 5x8, because that's a slightly smaller size. So in order for that to happen, I would go over to my file info inspector on the right hand side here, and I'm just going to change from Blurb 6x9 tradebook into Blurb 5x8 tradebook. And as soon as I do this, I get these two little M icons here again, and that is Storyist's way of telling me, hey, you need to rebuild that PDF. So let me do that. Click that Build PDF button again, give Storyist a moment, and see what the document looks like then. As soon as we're done, we can see that the copyright notice on the front page now goes over a page and a half here, and the page numbering at the bottom has reflown, so that's very cool. And now, sadly, also I have a much increased page count of 684 pages. And now, even though that's very cool, it means that a single copy of my book would now cost about $12 to $14 to print, and that is before anyone's made a markup. And Amazon in particular, they request a 60% additional charge on that. That's the minimum sales price you can make. So in my case, my book would have sold for $20 at a minimum, and that's just way too much. So I can't afford that. I can't ask people to fork out $20 for that. So I'm going to have to go with a slightly larger size here. That's because print-on-demand providers, they charge print per page. I believe in Amazon's case it's about 1.2 cents per page, but it doesn't matter how big the page is. So you could also go and grab an 8x10 copy of this, and that would also work. I'm going to switch this back to 6x9, and before I rebuild the PDF, I'm going to show you something else. So right now it looks like my book would start with the copyright notice, but if I'm thinking about the books I read, they don't really start like that. I mean, it's in there, but they really start with a title page, and then there's also a table of contents at some point, either before or after the copyright notice. Usually it's after that. How are we going to do that? Word has that option to build a table of contents. Pages has that. Does Storyist have that as well? Yes, it does. And it's specifically meant so that you can put it in a PDF. If you're creating a PDF version for somebody to read this on their e-reader, it even goes as far as inserting links in there, so that if they see the table of contents, they can click on a chapter, and then the ebook reader knows exactly where to go inside that giant PDF document. So very, very clever. Print providers don't need that, so Storyist also provides a way to then strip that out at the end if we don't need that anymore. Let me show you how that works. So on the bottom here, on your plus sign, again, this is now the project view of the PDF. I'm going to hit that, and there's these two things. Add project files, that's when you add project files that are in your project right now. But you also have add automatically generated file, and there we go with the title page, and we also have the table of contents. So let me add both, actually. Let me add a title page, which is now printed in italics, so that means this is a file that you haven't provided, but one that is automatically generated. And let's create another one, which is the table of contents. Now, in my case, as I said earlier, I suppose my document would want to start with the title page, but then I'd like to see the copyright notice, and then I'd like to see the table of contents. So let's move them in order. So let's click on the copyright notice and just move that up, and let me drop that here in between the title page and the table of contents. Now I can click Build PDF, And now this new 6x9 size will be taken into consideration, and my title page and my table of contents will be rebuilt. So that's very exciting. Let's see what it looks like. Title page, not exactly the author and the title that I did have in mind, so perhaps we need to change that a little bit here, but it's good to see that Storyist can build that in principle, so that's very cool. If I keep scrolling, then here's my title page, then here's my table of contents complete with page numbers. So it's very exciting stuff. That's exactly what I want. They are now also numbered in Roman numbers, and this is where my actual manuscript starts. So we can change all that when it comes to customizing these things. For now, I think I'm very happy with that. Perhaps the only thing I'm not so happy with is the fact that my title page doesn't have my own title on it. It has something else on there. Now, you can probably see where that is set. It's on the right hand side here. If you click on this left little icon here, the file info inspector under PDF properties, you can see the title and the author. So let's update that. So the title was indeed Broken Bowels, and the author in my case is J. Vers Lewis. Whoops, there we go, there it is. Keywords we don't really need, and as soon as I now go ahead and build that PDF again, then the title page should be rebuilt, and as soon as Storyist is done, we've got it. I also have a subtitle, so my book isn't actually called Broken Bowels, it's actually called Broken Bowels. It's kind of nice that I made a mistake here, because it makes you wonder how I ever came up with a large manuscript without that many mistakes. So there we go, hit return, and as soon as I hit build PDF, you get the picture. This is going to be amended. But I also like to have a subtitle on here, and that is not something that we can do out of the box. We need to customize the document for that. And there's also something perhaps that at the bottom of the contents page here, I don't really like these Roman numerals. Perhaps I'd like the title, the table of contents, I like that a little bit larger, and all kinds of things. Perhaps I'm not entirely happy with the font that's being used here. Perhaps I'd like not to have that indented space here. Perhaps I'd like to have text slightly smaller, so that brings the page count down even further. And let's look at that in the next video. For now, this is kind of in principle how you build PDFs, and we can take it from there. In the next video, we're going to have a look at how to customize them. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, of course, do hit me up down below in the comments, or check out the Storyist forums for more information. Other people will gladly help you out there, including myself. So I'll see you in the next video.